What is going on, fitness coaches? Welcome to another episode of the Change Lives, Make Money Online Training Podcast. It's your boy, Brian Mark. And in today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to overcome objections, time, money, spouse, and I need to think about it. My goal is to condense all this value into a 10-minute podcast. So let's see how we fucking go. Now, first things first is the best place to overcome objections is before they come up. So during the call, you need to be paying attention to red flags. Now, when you're on a sales call, here's exactly the red flags that you need to look out for so that you can overcome them before they come up. So first things first is asking about price during the call. If your prospect asks about price during the call, that is a red flag that they don't have the finances / they are considering price more than anything. So we're going to need to ask them some budget questions during the call. If they bring up a spouse, that they have a spouse at any point in the call, this is a potential red flag, as in you might get the spouse objection later. So we need to overcome that. And third thing is that if they talk about how they want to start in a few months or a few weeks. So if somebody brings up this idea of, I need to ask them about the price, right? If they're straight up like, how much does it cost? What you want to say is, I've got a bunch of different programs that fit different budgets, but let's make sure I can even help you before we discuss price. I just want to see if I can, basically ask you a few questions to make sure I can help you or not. Does that sound good? This is going to reframe and make the sales call all about them and not about the price. So just ask them if you can ask them a couple questions to figure out if you can even help or not. Now, that being said, if they do bring up price before we even get into the call, you need to make sure that you're getting a handle on their spending habits during the call. The way that you can do this is asking them if they go out, if they drink, and if they smoke, because if they do, all of these things can be used as ammunition for the money that they're currently spending later on in the call when they bring up the objection. You can also ask them about how much money they've spent on finding a solution to the problem. So like supplements, have they done any sort of therapy? Have they done online coaches? Have they done like Weight Watchers? Have they done any other like short-term fixes like Ozempic? This again, if they do bring up the fact that they've, they quote unquote can't afford it, this stuff can be used as ammunition. Now, they do bring up their spouse during the call, like if they say they're married or they have kids, whatever, here's what you need to say. Oh, you've got a significant other? That's amazing. Does your spouse know that we're speaking today? She does? Perfect. I love that. And typically speaking, is she really supportive of your goals? Like she wants you to lose the weight and get in shape? She wants to be happy? Cool. I love that. So I'm going to anchor this earlier on in the call so that if it does come up later, I can reference back to the fact that their spouse is supportive and they want them to be in shape. Now, if the prospect at any point during the call says that they want to start next month, then we basically need to stress the importance of why now, why me throughout the call. So throughout the call, we want to be like, so out of curiosity, you booked this call today, you showed up today. Obviously, you're here to learn. I'm curious, what brought you to this call today with me? Like, what made this a right now thing for you? Yeah. And just like out of curiosity, like, what is this like? Why did this become an important thing for you to start like losing weight and getting in shape right now? So I want to ask those questions throughout the call, which will create an internal sense of urgency. Cool. Now, let's talk about, I need to think about it. So that's the best place to handle it is before they come up. After they come up, here's how you handle it. So when somebody says, I need to think about it, I totally understand. Thanks for being honest with me, Nick. And just so I'm clear, what exactly is it that you need to think about? When you ask this question, you need to ask it in a slow and curious tone. This question will reveal their actual objection, which will probably be like, I need to check the budget, I need to talk to my wife, or I need to floss my cat, or whatever the fuck. Once you uncover their actual objection, then we can move on to the objection framework later on, and we'll tell you guys what that looks like. But you basically need to uncover what the real objection is. If they don't give you an answer, then you can be like, well, most of my clients, like when they usually have to think about decisions like this, it's usually like the timing or the budget, or they need to, talk to a significant other. Like, which one of those is it for you? Once I identify what their actual objection is, then I can overcome their actual objection. Let's talk about first things first, no matter what objection you get, whether that's time, money, or spouse, this is what you need to do. Okay, cool. That makes sense that you need to check your budget, Nick. Now, just to be super clear, budget aside, does this program sound like what you're looking for? This is called isolating the rejection. Once they say, yes, this program does sound like what I'm looking for, then I'm like, okay, perfect. Now, Nick, is there anything at the program that you don't like? Or do you really do feel like it's going to help you lose that 20 pounds, get into the best shape of your life? It's just the budget. When they confirm that there's nothing about the program that they don't like, and the only reason that they're not taking action is that it's the budget, then we've successfully isolated their objection. We need to do these two questions for every objection. Just to be clear, this objection aside, does this program sound like what you're looking for? They say yes. Then we say, is there anything about the program that you don't like, or you really do feel like it's going to help you get to the goal that you mentioned? Cool. Now for budget, once we isolate their objection, we're going to say this: I need to check my budget. Well, thanks for being honest with me, brother. So it's the $1,500 for 12 weeks. That's a little bit too much. Is that correct? Now, when they say yes, this is what you're going to say. Okay. So is it that you don't have a credit card you can put it on? Is it savings, or is it something else? And again, notice my tone. I'm super curious. I'm very relaxed. We want to basically get them to think about like ways they can come up with the money. Now, if they do say they have a credit card or savings they can put it on, then you're going to say this. I love it. Listen, John, like My goal is to help you get 20 pounds down in best shape of your life. So at the end of 6 months, if working together, basically we were working hand in hand and all we did was help you lose that 20 pounds and you looked and felt the best you've ever felt, would the investment be worth it? It would. Okay, perfect. Sounds like you're ready to get started. Would you prefer to do the paid in full option and save some money, or would you rather do the monthly? Now, this is for if they have a credit card or savings or something else. If they don't have a credit card or savings or something else, this is what you're going to say. Okay, I'll tell you what, John, why don't we do this? Instead of doing the $1,500, for 12 weeks, let's get started at the $400 a month. That's a lot easier on the wallet, and we'll make sure that we get you to your goal of 20 pounds down and we start seeing progress and results right away. And not only that, John, I'm so confident that you're going to lose the 20 pounds that if you follow my direction and my advice and you still haven't gotten the result at the end of the 6 months, I'll send you a full refund of everything you paid. How does that sound? And boom, just like that, you overcome the money objection, you collected some cash. Let's talk about spouse. So once you isolate the objection, the spouse objection, so you ask the 2 questions, totally understand that you need to speak to your partner, brother. I have a spouse that I run all my major decisions by as well. Does your spouse know that we're speaking today? Typically speaking, they're going to say yes, and then you're going to say, okay, perfect. And typically speaking, are they supportive of your goals? Like they want you to be happy? This is going to make the prospect come to the realization that the spouse is usually on board. All right, then we're going to go into this. Okay, I'll tell you what, I understand that you need to speak to your spouse and I respect that decision. I've also been on hundreds of these calls. And John, I know for a fact that if you get on this call and you don't take any sort of action, then the likelihood that you come back and getting started is like a 1 in 10. So let's do this. You can go talk to your spouse and make sure the decision makes sense. Let's get a $100 deposit. This $100 deposit is completely refundable. So if you go and talk to your spouse and she says that I suck or that she doesn't like my beard or she's not interested in you losing the 20 pounds, I'll send you a full refund. I just want to see that you're ready to actually take action and start working towards your own goals and that you want to do this for you. Does that sound fair enough? Boom. Now I've done a lot of sales, and in my experience, if you get an actual full commitment without talking to the spouse, it's a recipe for buyer's remorse. So I will get a deposit to secure their spot in the program and for them to put some money down. Now, this is going to do 1 of 2 things. 1, they're going to say yes and give you a deposit. Or 2, they're going to say, I need to talk to my spouse still. If they say they need to talk to their spouse still, you're going to say, okay, perfect. How much time do you need to speak with your spouse? And they're going to say something like 2 hours. And you're going to be like, okay, cool. So why don't we do this? Let's go get you speaking to your spouse. You can run it by her and make sure that, this decision is actually right for you. I'll give you a shout in 3 hours from now and we can have a quick catch up and you can let me know whether or not this is a good decision. Either way, on that call, if you decide it's not a good move, I'll give you a game plan moving forward so you know exactly what to do. Does that sound good? Boom. Just like that, you either secured a $100 deposit or a follow-up call. That being said, if you do secure a $100 deposit, you also need to follow that same framework to book a follow-up call, because just because they pay the deposit doesn't mean they're going to pay the rest of the program. So you need to make sure you always book the next call on the call. Perfect. Now let's say they want to start later. So we're going to isolate the objection with the 2 questions we mentioned. And then we're going to say, okay, perfect. So why is it that you want to start later? Usually it's budget, to which you can say, okay, perfect. So is that you don't have a credit card you can put it on? Is it savings or it's something else? Now, at this point, there are times when the prospect realizes that they do have a credit card, they could put it on, or they do have savings, in which case you might be able to close right now. But sometimes if you let the prospect go and say they're going to start next week, they're gone. So here's how you handle that. Okay, cool. So listen, John, I get that you're going on vacation. You want to be fully focused when you get started. I've also been on hundreds of these calls, brother. And I know for a fact that if you hang up the phone without taking any action, the likelihood that you fully commit to your goals and lose that 20 pounds comes down to 1 in 10. So you like the program. I like you. You know for a fact this is going to work. So let's get the investment taken care of today. That way we can remove all the logistics when you get back from your vacation on, the 1st of March. Then we can just hit the ground running and start seeing progress right away. I'll also send you a get started guide in the meantime. So while you're on vacation, you at least have a little bit of an idea of what we're working on when you're away. Does that sound good? Boom. Just like that. Now, if the prospect says, I don't have the budget for that right now, I definitely want to start next week or next month, you have to get some sort of financial commitment. If they hang up the phone without giving you a deposit, the likelihood of that prospect closing goes down to a 1 in 10. So if they say they want to do it, but they don't have the budget, that makes sense, Sean. I'll tell you what, listen, I'm super committed to getting you that 20-pound goal, and I know we can make that happen. And again, I've been on a lot of these calls, and I know that if you leave this call without taking any action, there's a high chance that nothing changes. So what I can do for you is this. Let's get you started next week. Let's get a $100 deposit right now to secure your spot in the program. That way, when we officially get started next week, I'll already have your program ready, and we can just get off to the races. Does that sound good? Boom. And just like that, we condensed the 4 main objections into a 10-minute podcast. Oh, I'm good. I'm good. If this was valuable, leave me a rating on the podcast. Let me know. Make sure you listen to this podcast again. Write down the cliff notes. Also want to let you guys know I'm releasing a book that's going to have all these objections written out, not to mention the entire sales process. So if you're excited, send me a DM on Instagram and say you can't wait for the book. It's coming soon. Peace.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Hopefully you got some value. If you did, and you want to learn more about how me and my team can help you scale your online fitness business to $10,000 a month, DM me 10K on Instagram at @TheRealBrianMark for for more information, and I'll reach out to you to see if I can help you grow an online coaching business.